Welcome back to the LSC Perspective. My name is Laura, and today we are going to continue our conversation about Queen Charlotte and dive into episode 3 and 4. So let's jump right into it. Make sure you grab your favorite Aldi snacks or Trader Joe's snack, get yourself a little drink, and get comfortable because I'm going to go ahead and spill all the deets on these episodes. So episode 3 opens and it's coronation day for the king and queen. And they have to put up a united front in front of everyone, in front of the people, the Dowager Princess, the Parliament, everyone that's in attendance at this coronation. So to the untrained eye, it looks like they're just in love and they're happy and they had such a great honeymoon and they're just in blissful harmony. Once the coronation is over, well, everyone goes their separate ways. As the title of the episode suggests, it's an even day. The king and queen have come to an agreement that on even days, they will go ahead and do their duties in trying to make an heir to the throne. Even though they despise each other and they're not getting along, some of that passion, if you will, does channel into their duties of trying to make an heir. In this episode, we do get introduced to young Violet and get a chance to get a glimpse into her family dynamic with her family and parents. Now, it's interesting because we get to see that she's more like her dad than she is her mom. As we go back to our king and queen, we get a glimpse into how far they're willing to go to make sure they make an heir to the throne. As far as going in bathtubs, dining room tables. Sir, not the dining room table? Basically anywhere that is available to them on an even day. Our Queen Charlotte confides in Lady Danbury and her situation with the king. And even though to Lady Danbury it looks like she despises the king, I would say the way how she talks, it would definitely be a front to how she really feels whenever she's around the king. Because the queen can't seem to stop talking about King George, Farmer George, or just George in the presence of Lady Danbury. Lady Danbury trying to make sure that she is keeping up with her end of the bargain that she's made with the Dowager Princess. Reports to the Dowager Princess with how happy and blissful the king and queen are, and of course they're trying to make a baby happily. She won't tell her the truth, though, about how much they despise each other. And I think that's a real friend. So Lady Danbury is really holding it down for her girl. The Dowager Princess does take that report and also tries to make sure that she lets Lord Bute know that the king is trying to make an heir to the throne. Lord Danbury and Lady Danbury are looking to see if they can host the first ball of the season. Lady Danbury decides she's going to present this idea to the Dowager Princess, who shuts her down. What does she do? She goes to the queen herself. I mean, after all, the queen is her friend, so she's thinking her homegirl's gonna look out for her. She advises her to try to persuade her ladies-in-waiting to come to the ball. And trying to do this, our queen is so obsessed with the king, it's not even funny. She's trying to figure out what he's doing, what's he up to, and, why won't he look at her? Lady Danbury decides to take it upon herself and let her friend know, like, listen, you over here simping over some man. You're the people's queen, don't you forget it. You have the power to do what you feel is necessary for your people. It's in that conversation with Lady Danbury that the queen decides that she is going to go ahead and act like the queen that she knows she is. She's the people's queen after all. On her next encounter with King George on an even day, she's talking to him and telling him that she understands him. She understands why he's a farmer and why he looks at the stars and why he's into the things that he's into, and that she doesn't want this arrangement anymore about even days or odd days or anything. She just wants to be. So when the king sees that the queen is being vulnerable to him and deciding to just be and not having any arrangements, he decides to go ahead and give this a shot as well. and the day of the Danbury Ball is upon us. And this is where we see young Violet and her family get properly introduced to Lady Danbury and Lord Danbury. The ball is going on, and people are just talking, but no one's dancing. No one's trying to get the party started. And she's talking to Lord Danbury, and she's just like, nobody's really engaging. And then who comes in and walks in? Our King George and Queen Charlotte. They come in and they go graciously to Lord Danbury and Lady Danbury and say hello. And once the people see this and they see them out on the dance floor, that's when everybody all of a sudden wants to dance and everybody wants to engage in the party, and the ball is a success. Violet's dad asks Lord Danbury if he could have the pleasure of dancing with Lady Danbury, to which he obliges. And that is our first encounter with how Violet's family is interactive with Lady Danbury. It's the end of the evening after the ball, and King George and Queen Charlotte are just having the time of their life, discussing who they saw, gossiping amongst each other as couples, and he's just showering her with compliments per usual. It's present day Violet, and she is mourning her husband on his birthday. She's talking with Lady Danbury, present day Lady Danbury, and confiding in her about how much she misses her husband and she hates days like this, and it's hard for her. There's an important piece to that conversation to keep in mind in the later episodes, because there's something that she says, and I don't know if you can watch and see Lady Danbury's expression, but there's something that she says, and it's all going to make sense in a later episode of why she made that facial expression when she mentions this tradition that she has in her family. Now, this episode ends on an interesting note because we get a glimpse into King George's behavior. There's a behavior that leads us into the next episode that will explain everything. I also wanted to mention that there is a character that we lose in this episode, and I'm not going to say who. Now, my favorite scene in episode 3 is when Lady Danbury decides to let Queen Charlotte know as a friend, like, hey, your palace walls, they're way too high, babes. And I think it's important to highlight this scene because nobody has ever talked to the queen like that. Even though she hasn't really come into her role as queen, everybody's too scared to be open to her. And she can always count on Lady Danbury to be open and honest with her about certain things. And she knows that Lady Danbury isn't going to steer her wrong, even in the short amount of time that they've known each other. So I really liked that scene, and I thought it was a really important scene to showcase in episode 3 of Queen Charlotte. And that's the end of my summary on episode 3. We're going to dive right into episode 4. Now, it's important for me to go ahead and warn you that there is some trigger warnings in this episode, as it does display scenes of torture. It does display some very uncomfortable methods that the doctor uses to try to treat the king, so be warned. Episode 4 is really where things start taking off with the plot line of Queen Charlotte. In this episode, we get to see King George's point of view with everything that has transpired between episodes 1 and 3, and we get to see what he was doing while all of those events were taking place. It opens with King George being in his element, being Farmer George in his farm and doing his thing, when he gets called to the palace to go see the Dowager Princess because he's heard that they found his bride-to-be. It's in this meeting with the Dowager Princess that we get to see firsthand and get a first glimpse of King George having a mental breakdown at the announcement of Charlotte being on her way to marry the king already. She's already on a boat, and that causes him to have a breakdown right there. With that being the first time that we see the king having a mental breakdown, the audience starts seeing why he's been MIA, being absent, trying to hold off on getting married, and even after being married, he tries to avoid Charlotte at all costs. The Dowager Princess takes it upon herself to meet with a group of doctors to see what they can do about the king's condition. And in the group of doctors, there's one particular doctor that comes forward and says that he can treat the king with just simply talking to him. And his treatment is just having conversation with the king. And his treatment of just talking to the king should be able to heal the king. And he decides to display that right in front of the Dowager Princess. He puts on a great performance. He ate it up because the Dowager Princess decides he's the doctor for the king and hires him. Remember in episode 1 how we got a chance to see how the king and the queen met in the garden? Something else takes place right before that scene. See, our king overhears Reynolds and Brimsley speaking about how the bride has gone MIA and no one can find her. So he decides, no bride, no wedding, I'm out. It's in him trying to make his escape that he encounters that same doctor. And he's thinking the doctor's gonna try to talk him out of it, trying to talk him out of escaping and just using one of his methods. When the doctor displays a different type of method he uses on the king as a form of treatment. After his encounter with the doctor, the king decides to go to the garden, and who does he meet and stumble across? Charlotte. That scene plays out and we get a chance to see how he sees it from his point of view, and we see his point of view as the wedding happens as well as the scenes after the wedding happens. But we also get to see what happens after he leaves Charlotte at Buckingham Palace. That's where he's having a conversation with Reynolds about how he's concerned, how she's just beautiful and she's too good for him. And we see his insecurities over his condition and how he's just married her, he's done his due diligence and he's done what they've asked of him. And now he's ready to leave her alone. And that's where we see why he leaves her alone right after that night. Remember how in episode 2, our queen Titty decided to roll up on the king and show up at his doorsteps and figure out what he's doing? Well, it's after that little encounter that we learn that the king decides that in order for him to be normal and to be near this girl, he has to hire that doctor and go through his treatments. We see the doctor use numerous amounts of treatments or really torturous ways to try to fix the king. And the king is really going through it, all in the name of trying to be normal for Charlotte and his insecurities. He doesn't realize that really he's hurting himself by trying to stay away from Charlotte. Like, that's not helping the situation at all. You're not even giving her a chance, the opportunity to know what's going on and let her decide for herself whether this is something that she wants to stay or whether this is something that she wants to leave alone. In one of those days where he's having his treatment, we see Reynolds walks in, and for the first time he sees what the king has been up to with his doctor. So Reynolds tries to talk to him, not only as his right-hand man, but as a man who is his friend and cares deeply for him, and tries to tell him, like, why don't you go near her? Why don't you try to give this an actual shot? You're never gonna know until you actually try. The king decides, well, there's no harm, there's no foul in at least trying or making an attempt and trying to court her. And that's when he starts sending gestures and he starts sending gifts to the queen. And we get his point of view of how he came to come up with that gift that she receives. We start seeing how George, in his attempt in trying to be near her and closer to her, he's pulling away from the doctor. And the doctor is starting to see that as well. The day that he gets news about what she thought about his gift, he decides, nah, I'm not gonna do my treatments today. I'm just gonna go ahead and be Farmer George. And while he's out in the fields, he gets the idea from one of his workers that he's gonna go ahead and attempt to make this work with Charlotte. One scene I think that is interested here is the scene where he spontaneously shows up for a meal with her. And we get to see right before that scene takes place what happens with his point of view, and he's almost anxious and nervous to see if she's even going to show up because of the way how he's been treating her. He starts to have tremors in his hands, and you can tell that he's about to have a breakdown right then and there, and he has to literally calm himself down and talk himself down before she shows up. We start seeing his point of view of him and the queen spending time together, when he took her out on a date, and how he just courted her, and a glimpse at those even days. It's in him spending time with Charlotte that he decides that he doesn't need the doctor anymore, and he dismisses the doctor and moves out of his palace and moves in to be with the queen. We're at the night of Danbury Ball, and they make their appearance, and they're back at Buckingham Palace, and they're doing what couples do by talking about the event, who they saw, and gossiping. He wakes up in the middle of the night, and he goes to his kitchen to find the doctor in his kitchen, preparing something, comfortable in the kitchen. He lost his mind in his kitchen, preparing something. And he's like, yeah, I'm preparing something for the queen. Just nonchalant. The king is like, why would she have you prepare anything? In that moment, the doctor decides to share a piece of news with the king that he didn't know and caught him completely off guard, which is why we get the scene at the end of episode 3. The next morning, he wakes up to find himself alone, and he looks out the window and he sees Queen Charlotte off to God knows where. He follows her, and to his surprise, she's having a conversation with the Dowager Princess of what transpired the night before. And he overhears a conversation between the Dowager Princess and Queen Charlotte that causes him to take drastic measures and make a very drastic decision. That's the end of episode 4 summary. My favorite scene from episode 4 is probably the scene where him and Reynolds are talking, and he's like, well, what does she think about the gift? Like, what did she say? Because you can tell, like, the response just brings him alive. He comes alive just hearing how she reacted to this gift. And I think it's the most cutest thing, and that may be the spark that he needed to take control of the situation and actually try and attempt to make something work with Charlotte. I thought it was a cute scene, and so that's why that's my favorite scene out of all of episode 4. If you've seen these episodes, please let me know below and share your thoughts in the comment section of what you thought of episode 3 and 4 or any of the other episodes. If there's a recommendation you think I should check out, go ahead and leave your recommendations below in the comments. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button, comment your reactions below, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. It's your girl Laura. I'm signing out. I'll see you next time.